We're kicking off the last week of this series of free beginner group classes. So this is an 8-week long program, and it's designed really as a way for people to get to a point where they know enough about the guitar to get started and start training. And if a person chooses to pursue lessons after this or wants to continue learning on their own or whatever they want to do with it, the goal of this class is to help them get prepared so they can go into that with some amount of confidence and feel like they understand what they're doing. Can they read a chord diagram? Can they read tab? Do they know what they're looking at when they see some lyrics on a page and some chords written there? And do they have a strategy for learning new chords? Have they ever played a scale? Have they ever thought about jamming and what that might be like? It's a lot of stuff, but it's all really important because we need to have enough context. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much, and please consider subscribing. My channel's tiny, but I'm going to be putting out guitar educational materials at least every week with long-form content videos and entire courses for free on here. That way students can learn and get everything they need to play the guitar in sort of one consistent method. And then from there, I'm just looking to be a guitar educator for the rest of my life. That's really important to me. So if anyone wants to take private lessons, that's currently the only thing I charge for. Beyond that, I'm running these free classes. If you're interested in those, leave a comment or reach out. I have a website, and I'm starting to launch this guitar study app called shrednetwork.com. If you want to join that, it's free. It's in beta, so we're still working on making sure the bugs are worked out and everything, but I'm really excited about what we're building there, and there's going to be lots and lots of content added over the coming months. So thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you so much for subscribing and leaving comments and just supporting this. It's been a long road to get here, and I'm just really excited to be seeing some growth. It means the world to me. Thank you. One of the hardest things about being a beginner is that the world of music is huge. And what we can do with the guitar is a huge thing as well. And so when we're starting learning, you're just thrown in the deep end. There's a quote that I like. I unfortunately don't remember who exactly said it, but it says, "How do we learn music? All at once, one bite at a time." So the idea is we're right in the middle, but we also have to chunk away at it until we fully understand it. And honestly, you'll always find new things to understand and appreciate about it. So it's not like you'll ever fully learn music, right? That's an impossible task because it's an endless world. There's always more to learn. There's always new pieces of music. There's new genres. There's all kinds of things. And that's one of the things that's great about it as well, is that it's something you can dump as much of your time into the pursuit of that if you want to. If you want to go to a PhD level with it, you have the option. You can get multiple PhDs in music. There's a lot you can study. Or if you just want to learn to play music with your friends or play music in your bedroom or write your own songs or whatever level you want to get to with it, you absolutely can get there. I like to say that learning music is not easy, but it is straightforward. What I mean by that is that people who understand how to communicate the steps to follow exist. They're called teachers, and competent music teachers have been around for a long time, and they understand that these are just steps. If a student completes the steps, the student will learn the skill and be able to do the thing. And if they've never been exposed to the steps and they've never thought about that stuff and they've never tried it before, that student is going to have a harder time doing those things. And so until they've gotten that exposure, until they've gotten that muscle memory and done lots of reps, the teacher knows that they're not going to be very skilled at the task. But in my experience with teaching people, students who manage to get through the steps tend to get the result. And I'll say some students, maybe they get the result a little bit faster than others. Some students, it might take them a little bit longer, but generally speaking, all students who put in the work get the result. And that's kind of part of what I'm trying to encourage here. If music matters to you, if you're like, I love playing music, I would love to one day be able to play a gig, or I would love to play an open mic someday, or I would love to just play at my church, or whatever your goal is. Just understand that you can chip away at it until you get there. And at no point does any of this require intense, deep thinking and deep theory. Music theory itself can go very deep. Like I said, you can get a PhD in music theory, but music is also like a folk art, and it's shared by communities in ways that isn't always pretentious. And a lot of times you can learn what you need to learn just by talking with your community and playing with your friends. And that's how a lot of people learn it. So you don't have to go scientific about it if you don't want to be. But if you get exposure and you work away at it over time, you are going to get to a point where you're whatever musician you want to be. And I really genuinely believe that. And that's what this is about. I'm trying to help students get to that point where they feel like they have enough context to say, okay, yes, I'm interested in music, I'm interested in guitar, and I understand what that landscape looks like. And now I can make a more informed decision about, like, how do I want to move forward with it? What kinds of goals do I want to set? How long would I like for it to be until I get there, right? But it can take a few years of playing, let's say, half hour a day on average, before you're really confidently, smoothly playing a lot of songs. It could take 6 months, it could take 9 months, but it will take time. And so understand that if you want to become a really advanced musician, say that your goal is to be a professional studio session guitar player, you can either get there over a period of like 20 years of casual practice, or you can hire a very qualified teacher to help you get there over a period of 5 or 6 years. But either way, it's going to take you some time and dedication and effort. If you want to become someone who can comfortably play an open mic and sing and play guitar at the same time and write your own songs, you can get there with 2 or 3 years of casual effort. But understand that it will take some time, and the best way to get there, if you can, is by following some method, working with an instructor. And more importantly than that, though, even if you're not working with an instructor, even if the idea of that's completely out of budget or anything, just practice regularly and try to refine your method over time. Try to actually think about what you're doing and how that's going to affect your long term. And that's where you will actually see the reward. I think most people who think they can't make effort studying on their own still aren't studying that consistently. So if you can get the consistency and you can do something that makes sense to you and refine that over time, you'll still probably get closer and closer to your goal. You'll probably just waste a lot more time than you would if you were working with an instructor. But that's okay, because even if you work with an instructor, there will still be some wasted time. We never have like fully optimized time ever. So on some level, there will always be some waste in anything you learn. And if you're trying to avoid any waste, you'll have a much harder time making forward progress. And I just say that because some people are afraid to get started and jump in and practice and play. You're probably mostly doing it right. And the things that you're not doing correctly, they're probably not going to prevent you from being able to succeed in the long term. So just if you practice at the best of your known current ability, and you do things that is making sense to you, and you practice regularly, and you apply the main areas that we covered in the classes leading up to now, you'll probably become a fairly competent guitarist just following that method. But like I said, it's always going to be more effective if you're working with some type of experienced mentor, and especially you want to find other people to play with and other guitarists to collaborate with. It's a very social thing. Look for any opportunities you can to play. Okay, so let's get into the content for the last week. So this week, we are going to take a look at power chords. We're going to look at open position power chords and movable power chords. we are going to take a look at bar chords. We are going to discuss strumming patterns and grooves. This splits to another page. We're going to look at turning grooves into phrases and some application over a backing track. So some of this we're going to go through quickly so that we can focus on the other parts. Also, magically, I actually don't have another lesson right after this today, so I am able to go a little over time, and I will if it is going to result in communicating the content more effectively. So, power chords are a lot of fun. They're used in guitar a lot, in rock music especially. You'll hear these kind of... The power chord is like a chunky chord that doesn't have a lot of color. It's very stable, and it is neither major nor is it minor, so it can be used in lots of contexts, and it's the foundation of a lot of rock and roll, a lot of blues, and a lot of pop songs are primarily power chords. I demonstrated the power chord in a prior lesson where we were talking about palm muting, but I didn't actually fully talk about what the power chord was. Power chords are going to be generally played on either 3 strings or 2 strings. So we have a 3-string version and a 2-string version. They're very much based on each other, and we can do these in open position, or we can move them around. So one of the reasons power chords are so popular is because it's a movable shape. So you can take the same shape and play it in lots of places. You can really like flesh out a chord progression with it. So these are just power chords. And here I'm playing the 3-string version. I could play 2-string versions of these. The 3-string version just sounds like a more full version. So the power chord itself is just named after whatever bass note we're playing. So the bass note is the lowest pitch note in the chord. So for these power chords, this is called G5 because it's starting on the 3rd fret of the E string, which is a G note. And this is called C5 because it's starting on a C note. This is called E5 because it's starting on an E note. When we say starting on in this case, I just mean the bass note. The lowest note in the chord is the E. So power chords, by the way, are called 5 when they're written out. So when you see G5, that means a G power chord. C5 is a C power chord, and so on. And notice, these power chords are the same shape as each other, but when we move to starting the bass note on string number 4, the D string, or having the bass note starting on the G string number 3 here, the shape changes. And that's because the tuning between the G and the B string makes it, we have to adjust the shape there because the G and B string are tuned differently than the other strings, which we're not going to get fully into right now. But basically, this is showing how you could take that power chord and move it across the strings. But notice when we start with our bass note on string 6, the E string, or we start with our bass note on string number 5, the A string, the shape stays the same between these. And we usually will play our power chords starting on string 6 or string 5. And that's because those strings have the lower notes on them and sound a bit chunkier, and we want our power chords to sound chunky. If I play a power chord higher up, Still sounds really cool, but it doesn't have that chunky, bassy quality that we often want in our power chord. So when you're practicing power chords for now, just stick to the ones that start on string 6 and 5 first, and then these other ones can be thought of as, reference for later. You're not going to run into them as much. And then same thing, the 2-finger version, 2-string version is just the 3-string version with 1 less finger. And then the open positions, the same concept as well. We're just doing them open. So that's basic introduction to power chords. Every power chord shape you're probably going to play for your first few years, for the most part, is on these pages here. That should have what you need. Okay, let's talk about bar chords. Bar chords is one of the biggest hurdles for new players to clear, and a lot of players give up before they have mastered bar chords, and that's unfortunate. They're actually not too bad, but they do require a bit of effort. Let's talk about what they are, and then I'll talk about some tips for getting good at them. So when we're talking bar chords, these are chords where one finger, bars, where we're holding that finger across an entire fret across multiple strings on the same fret. So here in this G major bar chord, the first finger spans across and bars on fret 3, and then the other fingers are playing the notes higher up. Okay. When I play this G major bar chord, I've got fingers 3, 4, and 2 up here, and finger 1 is on fret 3. Like that. Okay. And if I were to take these other fingers off, that third finger is holding down all of the strings on that fret. So that's what we call barring, right? And so let's go into some tips to actually get good at this. So first off, you're going to need to use the edge of the first finger for barring. And by edge, a bit of the side that's close on the side of the thumb. So the thumb side of the finger. You don't want to just use the pad of the finger, like the bottom of the finger, because that's going to have bumps in it. And so it's harder to get it a little bit more consistent. We want to use a bit of the side of the finger because it's a bit more, I'm going to say, flat. And the other thing that's really important is you want to make sure that you actually build callus on your barring finger. Now, if you build callus and you take time to do this, you're going to see that you learn to bar much quicker than those that do not. To build callus, again, it's not that attractive. You basically just rub the side of the finger up and down on the strings and wear it out a little bit each day. You want to press firm enough that you feel it doing something, but don't break the skin or anything. You're not trying to actually cause an injury here. But if you do this for a couple minutes, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, and rough the side of the finger up, you also can use a nail buffer file or something as well. But that just really helps the callus build, because if you're just pressing down and trying to play bar chords for a few minutes a day, that callus may never build. And so bar chords might always be problematic. But if you build that callus, it's really going to help. And the other thing with chords, and this is really quite important, is we want most of the force of the fretting to come from the shoulder as we pull our whole hand. We pull all of our fingers into the fretboard, and we support the body of the guitar a little bit with our other arm so that it doesn't pull. And you can use your thumb a little bit as well, but that balance of pulling the fingers in helps you get a nice even tone. If you're squeezing, where you're using your thumb to provide the counter pressure for your chord, you'll feel that you get cramping in your thumb often, and that there's a lot of tension there. That means you're squeezing too hard, and you want to use a bit of the shoulder to bring those fingers in and get a nice even fret. And we talked about this with chord push-up exercise. You're working on that shoulder movement. This really helps with getting your bar chords. A lot of beginners don't know to fret their chords that way, and they're going to struggle with their bar chords. A lot of more advanced players still squeeze their chords as well. So even a lot of players don't know to do fretting from the shoulder, but it really makes a big difference. The other tip for bar chords is that it's best to make the non-barred part of the chord shape first in the beginning, and then put the bar down so that you can get your position correct. So here I would make this part of the shape, and then I put the bar. A lot of people want to put the bar first and then try to get the other fingers. That tends to put the hand in not as comfortable of a position. So work on the non-barred part of the chord shape first. What I was trying to say, though, is that make the non-barred part of the chord first, and then place the bar. That will help. And then the other thing that's quite important is that where the bar finger lands to get the strings barred properly is actually specific. It's more specific than people might realize. And it's a little bit different from person to person. So the tip I'm trying to communicate is that if you find a spot where it works, pay really close attention and try to recreate that over and over again each time. Because if you're just a couple of millimeters too high or too low each time, it's not going to work consistently. You want to really try to identify, okay, it works really well in this position, and I want to try to get my finger right back into that placement each time, rather than just kind of trying a random spot for your bar. And I use like the knuckle and where it lands with the string as like a measuring device to see, okay, I know that spot works well. And then from there, working on building muscle memory from that point. And a really simple exercise with barring is just taking this finger and up, down, we're not usually barring above fret 15. So if you practice barring to fret 15, like that's probably good enough. Beyond that, it's just a matter of getting time and practice with your bar chords. This would be the first 6 bar chords a person should learn, in my opinion. And the ones that are based on the 6th string, we sometimes call E form. And you can remember that because they start with their bass note on the E string. And the ones that are 5 string, we sometimes call A form because their bass note starts on the A string. You could say that these are the E form shapes and the A form shapes. That matters if you're working with like caged method mostly down the road. For now, that's not terribly important, but I just wanted to say the 6 string ones, sometimes we can call E form or E type, and the 5 string ones we sometimes call A form or A type, just so you have that reference. So here we have a G major, we have there's a bug. I need to correct this chord. So this is the G7. We call it the dominant 7. It is not called a G major 7. And it is not a power chord. So remember how our power chord says C5? People think, okay, if C5 is a power chord, then C7 is probably some type of power chord. It is not, or G7 in this case. We have C7 here. Chord names come from a variety of different traditions, and so they're not always entirely consistent. There's a couple of rules you have to learn. So one of those rules is if you see a letter with a 5 next to it, that means a power chord. Now, one of the other rules is that if you see a letter with a 7 next to it, that doesn't mean a power chord. This means a dominant 7 chord, and it a dominant 7 is a different type of chord than a major 7. So sometimes people will mistakenly call this a major 7. Sometimes they'll mistakenly think it's a power chord. Neither of those things are true. This is its own type of chord called a dominant 7 chord. And the dominant 7 chord is a very American sounding chord. It is very bluesy. It's very jangly. It's very old-time rock and roll-y. It sounds like every rock and roll song from the early 60s. A lot of those songs are entirely dominant 7 chords. A lot of blues songs are entirely dominant 7 chords. And a lot of popular songs are going to have dominant 7 at various points. So I don't think I actually covered this, but one of the beauties of bar chords is just like the power chord, the bar chord is movable. So when we have this A-type shape, the A form, I can move it around on string 5. I can play lots of different dominant 7 chords. If I have this E form, I can move it around and I can play lots of different dominant 7s on, starting from the bass note on string 6. So this would be G7, A7, B7, C7, D7, E7. And here we have C7, D7, E7, F7, G7, A7, B7, C7, D7, E7, F7, G7. So you see how I'm able to just slide the same shape around and get a different chord out of that. So if I have a chord progression that calls for, let's say, C7 to G7 to F7, I could do that all on one string. Or if I wanted to change strings, I could play the E form of the dominant 7 and the A form of the dominant 7 and mix and match so that I could play that same progression in a more similar position. So once you learn a couple bar chord shapes, you can play lots and lots of songs because you can just play in any key. You can apply most of the songs you play, especially in the beginning, are going to be made mostly from major chords and minor chords and dominant 7 chords. If these 6 chord shapes here, it opens up a heck of a lot of doors, for sure. So these are the 3 types of chords we're going to be working on: major, dominant 7, and minor. And we have an E form and an A form of both of those. And those are just named based on which root note they start on, which bass note they start on in this case. If you want to know which bass note you're starting on, you can go to a fretboard diagram and just look for the notes. So if I play the E form from here, it would be a G. If I play it from here, it would be an A. If I play it from here, it would be a B. If I play it from here, it would be a C. If I play the A form, I could play that from this C and play C, this D and play a D, this E and play an E, this F and play an F. So you can use that to basically figure out how to play any chord progression that's made from major, minor, or dominant 7 chords. And that's going to be the majority of the progressions you start with early on. So I already alluded to the bar chord wisdom here. So build callus on the side of the finger, bar with the edge of the finger, When you find a bar placement that works, carefully visualize and inspect it. And then let's put in here as well, make the non-barred part of the chord first, and then place the bar. Okay. And this other one I don't think I covered explicitly. So if your bar chords sound a bit buzzy or dull or muted in the beginning, allow yourself a bit of time playing those chords regularly before you worry too much about getting them perfect. So a lot of people in the beginning, their bar chords sound buzzy. That's because there's actually several things that need to come together to get your bar chords to sound good. It might be a bit painful. You might not have the calluses. You might not be fretting from the shoulder properly. There's a bunch of components that kind of need to come together. And once you get that, it'll sound fine. But if all of those aren't in place, you might have a bit of buzz, and that doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong in the long term, because you're still learning how to do it properly. Sometimes people get so frustrated that their chords don't sound good that they just give up, or they think, I must be doing this wrong. Just because your chords don't sound good in the beginning doesn't mean that you're fundamentally 180 degrees off the correct solution, right? You might be mostly correct, but there's a couple of things that you have to get to click for yourself. So give it time and don't be stressed about it. Like, it is totally fine for your chords to buzz for a few months. That doesn't mean you're not going to be able to play good sounding chords down the road. So that's the main advice, is if you expect it to be perfectly sounding good in the beginning and easy, you're going to be frustrated because bar chords take a bit of effort. Okay, let's continue on. Okay, so strumming patterns and grooves. We talked about this already a bit, but I wanted to dive into it a little bit more. So groove is really important in music, and you'll hear people talk about strumming patterns, and strumming patterns are basically just different rhythmic grooves to strum to. So you could do something like 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So that's a basic pattern. And when you learn these patterns, you realize they're a little bit generic in the sense that many songs use strumming patterns where you could pretty much interchange it for a different strumming pattern, and it's not going to make that big of a difference. If I'm playing and I just generally have the feel of the song and a strumming pattern that complements it well, then that's fine. It doesn't have to be one specific strumming pattern. So a lot of times you'll see guitar teachers teach a song and they'll say, these are the chords, and here's the strumming pattern. This kind of irritates me just a little bit because that implies like a song has one strumming pattern or something like this. And that's not the case. What the teacher's really saying is, here's the chords and here's a strumming pattern that will approximately sound pretty close to the song, the way it's recorded, or like this, the main sort of general idea, or this is a strumming pattern that will get you sort of part of the way there. But usually in a song, the guitarist is actually going to change the pattern up a bit as they go. They're going to develop those ideas and so on, and they're not going to be just stuck in one strumming pattern the whole time. Like when you play a song, you're not just playing. You might use that as a foundation, but you might dress it up a little bit. And how you dress it up is often called accompaniment or comping. And the idea is you play a pattern that complements the music well, that has a nice groove, that fits nicely, but it's up to you to decide how exactly do I want to play the chords here? What groove do I want to use? What do I think sounds good? And that's actually a lot of fun. So when I go to play a song, I won't usually listen to what exact strumming pattern is used on the record. I'll usually just think, what groove do I think sounds good with this? How do I want to play the song? And so the only way to know what grooves you think are going to sound good is by getting experience playing them and counting them and listening to them in context and thinking about the pros and cons of them and what you find interesting and what you find boring and so on. So you want to get experienced with it. So you should be practicing playing rhythm patterns regularly. This should be a regular, ongoing part of your practice. You should always have some rhythm that you're reading, some patterns that you're practicing strumming. And so these are some really basic patterns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1, 1, 2, 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And these symbols up here, this one that looks like a staple, this means a down pick or a down strum. And this one that looks like a V that's pointing downward means up strum, unfortunately. But yeah, the staple means down and the downward facing arrow means up. Guitar teachers have to stay employed somehow. Okay, so if I were doing this and I wanted to strum along, I could strum 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4. And so the strumming there is down, 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 up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, 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 up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 and. I'm glad I got through that. So those are basic patterns, and those are patterns with no syncopation. We talked about syncopation in a prior lesson. Without syncopation, it's hard to make patterns that sound too catchy, but they're totally fine to practice with. So you can use those as strumming patterns. You can start off, you can practice counting them, but once you put syncopation in, when we syncopate, we rest on the beat, or we just hold the note through the beat, but we don't play on the beat. We play on the and of the beat. Gives the music a little bit of shuffle. It moves it along in an interesting way. It makes it syncopated, and syncopated grooves are a lot more interesting. I included these for reference. We're not going to go through all of them in this lesson, but the combination of grooves without syncopation and grooves with syncopation is often very tasty. For example, I could take measure 4 from here that has no syncopation, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and then I could put measure 4 from here that has syncopation on the back half. So I could go 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4. So now I've got a little bit of syncopation in there, and that's interesting. So to count when the beat has a rest is a bit tricky because we are counting non-linearly. So the way that I recommend doing this is still counting the number for the beat and still mouthing it, but don't actually say it aloud. So when I'm counting this, I'm going 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4. So I still count 2, and I still make the shape of 2, but I just don't make the sound. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4. There, I whispered it. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4. And learning to do that takes a little bit of practice. And as a music student, you should spend lots and lots of time counting. So here, if I combine this measure and this measure, I can make a sort of interesting strumming pattern. So I could go 1. Oh, by the way, to rest when we strum, you can lay this part of the hand on the strings and still do the down strum, but not hit the strings. And this allows you to keep your hand moving in time. So if I go 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1. So there, I'm doing a rest as I'm doing the down strum. So I let the guitar, I let this part of my hand land on the strings, and then I let momentum carry my hand down for the down strum. So I could do rest, and on that rest, my palm is, the side of my hand is down, and I'm just not hitting the strings. So my pick's far away, but I try to keep the momentum in my hand so that I can get that rest in accurately. And that matters a lot when you start playing a little bit of a faster groove or you have a lot of syncopation. So there I can play pretty quick and still have rest put in there. And that idea of trying to keep the momentum going is really valuable. So this technique takes a little bit of practice, but you practice resting by laying that part of your hand on the strings and just letting your whole wrist go limp after you lay the side of your hand on the strings. I call this a rest strum, by the way. So we have a rest, so we have strum, and then a rest strum, and then an up strum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So that rest strum is really handy. Once you learn to throw it in, but it does take a little bit of practice to learn how to do that. So you might have a bit of trouble in the beginning, but basically the combination of non-syncopated patterns and syncopated patterns is a good way to come up with interesting strumming patterns and grooves that you can use in a melody. So there's a little rule that I like to teach people. A great note choice with a boring groove is rarely great music. A boring note choice with a great groove is often great music. Okay? The point here is that rhythm, the groove, is really essential for making music that we think is interesting. And if you take a great note choice and a great rhythm, you're bound to have great music. I didn't put that in there, but that's also implied here. But the idea is a simple note choice can sound amazing if you give it a good groove. But a great note choice, a very complex or interesting note choice, is still boring with a boring groove. So note choice is less important than your groove. And there's one more type of rhythm unit as well that you want to learn. This is the triplet. We already talked about this a little bit, but I wanted to cover this as well because triplets are a good thing to use in groove, and a lot of modern music use triplet-based rhythm. When we play triplets, we usually strum them down, up, down. And if we have two triplets in a row, that means that the strumming direction is usually reversed. So we have down, up, down, up, down, up with that. And that takes a bit of practice. The triplet is counted 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. So if I were to play this measure here, it'll be 1, 2, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1, 2, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. And the strumming would be down, 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 up, down, up, 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 1, 2, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1, 2, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1, 2, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1, 2, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. And the triplet grooves, they got a nice sort of ballady feel to them, or bluesy feel. And triplets are also really popular in like hip hop flows and stuff as well. A lot of music will have like triplets going on in them, which is really cool. So if you're wanting to start improvising and jamming with other people, you'll want to come up with a chord progression and you'll want to put some sort of strumming pattern to it. So you could use your practice with these types of rhythms to have those be your strumming pattern. So maybe I could do something like 1, 2, and 4, and 1, 2, and 4, and... already sounding like a Beatles song or something. So this is just going between a 1 to the 4, C to F. We have 1, 2, and 4, and 1, 2, and 4, maybe I go to the 5 chord, the G. 1, 2, and 4, and 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 1, 2, and So that's how you could take like a basic progression, C, F, C, G. We talked about that progression earlier on in this course, and you can put a groove to it, and then you could say, okay, we're in the key of C, friend, because I'm assuming you're jamming with a friend. Okay, friend, we're in the key of C. Try coming up with a melody over this that uses the C major scale or the C major pentatonic. And now you're off to the races. You've got someone playing the chords, you know what scale to play over it, and you've got an underlying groove that you're working on developing. From there, you can mix and match. You can try different grooves out. You can find grooves that are compatible with each other. You can have the melody. So melody also is in time, so it has its own groove. And so we want to learn how to apply this stuff in the context of jamming with others. So before this class today, I took the track we were working with before, and I made a little video jam track of it. This track I like to work with because there's a lot of time in between the chord changes. So this is perfect for starting, and there's only 2 chords. So if I let this play, I can start by counting along with it. One of the first things you want to do when you're working on jamming with other people or you're working on playing over a backing track, you want to count the groove and figure out where the actual beat is. Beat is all relative. There are some tricks you can use to find it. In most rock music, the main snare is hitting on beat 2 and beat 4. So if you know what a snare drum sounds like, you can use that. But generally speaking, you want to just listen to the song and figure out at what speed does it feel natural to you to tap your foot to, and then you just count that groove. So if I'm listening to this song, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So here the snare is happening on beat 2 and beat 4, so that kind of gives it away. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So I'll start counting along with it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. other thing, on YouTube, you can change the playback speed. So if I go over here, I can set the playback speed to slower or faster. This is really useful when you're learning to jam. So like maybe this is a little fast, so I can just slow it down and count along with it a little slower. So that can be handy for getting used to it. So now we have this, and you can practice playing the chords along with it and just strumming in time. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, So that means that I've found the beat and I'm able to play along with that beat and stay in time and play those changes. Anytime you play over a jam track, try to learn the chord progression and practice the chords. It will help you be better about the melody that you come up with. But you could also practice the scale in time and just practice playing it along with the beat. And this is a really good thing to practice. There's a time where you should do a lot of this. So here, if I'm playing the C major pentatonic scale, I'll play this along with the beat. Now, that of course still sounds very much like an exercise because I'm just playing on beat and I'm just going up and down the scale. We talked about phrases in last week's session. We know that phrases, we often want them to sound like an idea, like a complete idea, like either a standalone idea or an idea that requires a response. To make it sound like an idea, one thing you can do is just stop on a note and hold a note, and that causes like a pause in there. If you have a long run-on sentence with no pausing, it's hard to track the ideas along the way, rather. If you have adequate pauses, you can differentiate the difference between ideas in conversation. Hopefully. I'm working on my pacing in conversation. Been watching these videos back, right? I'm trying to become better at this. Okay, that being said, if we want it to start sounding like discrete phrases, one thing you can do is just play in time and then just stop and hold a note. And now all of a sudden, you've got an idea, you've got a phrase. And then you can try that over and over again. So you could try something like, maybe I stop on 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So there, every other bar, I was holding beat number 1 for the whole measure. So I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And because I was holding a note, it was allowing that to create some discrete phrases. Now, from there, I can decide, do I want more of the same phrase, or do I want to come up with variations on that phrase? If I want variations on the phrase, do I want to vary the rhythm, or do I want to vary my note choice? So there, I was keeping the same rhythm, but I was trying different note choices. Here, if I keep the same rhythm and I keep the same notes, then I'm working on what we call a motif, and we're just allowing that motif, that theme, to recur. So I'll just do the same theme. Here's the theme. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So just doing the same idea over and over again is totally a good way to practice. Just getting some themes out there and practicing putting something with a groove in time. From there, I chose a very boring groove. Remember, we want an interesting groove if we want something that's going to sound like interesting music. So if I choose 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's not very interesting. If I do 1 and 3 and 4, 1 and 3, 4, and then maybe something with some variation where I do 2 measures back to back, 1 and 3 and 4, 1 and 3, 4, 1 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 3, 4, 1 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 3, 4. And I can go back and forth between those ideas to create some play. So there, you can see how a simple idea, 1 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3, 4, 1. We can do variation on that to actually wind up with what I thought of at least as a somewhat decent jam. It can be fun taking a basic groove and just counting along with the track and then applying that to a basic scale like the C major pentatonic and then developing those ideas. That's how you learn to improvise. It starts with kind of getting a groove, putting some notes to it, figuring out which ones you like, and playing around with it until you get it. And it's not that tricky. You can start with finding a pattern and practicing counting. So if I'm counting along over this track here, let's say I take a pattern from here and I practice counting. So this is 1 and 3, 4, 1 and 3, 4. I can practice counting that over the track. And 3, 4, 1, 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 and 3, 4, 1. And then I can practice strumming that pattern. And 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, 1, and 3, 4, 1. you can practice a melody that uses that pattern. That's how it works. So we can go from a groove to a strumming pattern or a groove to a melody, and practicing that over the jam track allows you to get quite good at jamming. So let's go through and talk about next steps here for students. So that's the main lecture portion of the program there. And so hopefully the idea of how this stuff ties together is making more sense. We can make chord progressions out of the chords. We can make strumming patterns. We can use those as a foundation for our harmonies that we play in our songs. We can create strumming patterns and jam with other people. We can create melodies from our scales to create some melodic ideas that go over the chord progressions and fit it all together. We can use movable chords. We've got bar chords. We've got the capo, ways of playing in different keys. We covered a heck of a lot in this course. So I know this session is a little bit longer, but we're wrapping up now soon. First off, I'm relaunching this April 6th, and it's going to be actually 10 weeks of classes, but there's going to be one off week at least. So it's going to be split over 11 weeks. This is going to be open. This is Sundays. And this is open to all Oregon residents over the age of 18. But I'm also going to say for anybody who's actually following me on YouTube, they're welcome as well. So there is a sign up link for anyone who wants to come to that. This is going to be free. And what we're going to be doing is going over the same material that we went over in this course, but improved, because as I've gone through for this course, I've been able to think about, okay, what was a little rushed and what would be better to refactor a little bit. So it'll be a smoothed out version of this course. And then in between now and then, I'm going to be releasing weekly videos on YouTube where I go into details that are more advanced for anyone who is considering taking lessons. So I've been thinking about this and trying to make it sensible. So this is what I'm going to be offering. Like I said in the beginning of the course, I don't have a lot of time to work with every total beginner that reaches out to me. And so part of the reason why I'm doing this course is because I want to help make sure that the students who are working with me are people who at least have the basic fundamentals and who understand like what goes into learning guitar and how I teach. I've decided that for anybody who goes through one of these beginner group classes, I will make myself available as an instructor for them. And Drew is also going to be an instructor that is available. My rates are pretty par for the course for any professional instructor with my level of experience and a master's degree in music. I charge a professional rate, and I'm looking to work with students who really want to take guitar as something that they're pursuing for at least an hour a day, people who are looking to actually get quite good at it and who need an instructor who's really able to optimize things and give them that sort of really world-class experience, we'll say. Whereas Drew, he is newer to teaching, and so the world-class experience he offers, first off, I've worked with him for quite a while now, helping him with learning my curriculum and talking about teaching, and I really vouch a lot. I think that Drew is actually very capable of working with beginners and teaching them lots and lots of very valuable information. And of course, his rates are substantially less than mine. So in that sense, it's good. I think anybody who comes through this course is going to have a really positive experience working with Drew if they are interested in. So if that is the case, if it is the case that someone would like to learn with Drew or with me, please reach out via my email, which again, I'll put in the chat here, but it's sybil@portland-guitar.com. We also have a form that you can fill out for an intro session. If you want to request an intro session with me, please fill out that information. The other thing is that this is going to be part of the upcoming classes as well. But I have launched an online portal called shrednetwork.com at the moment. And it is a place where you can log your practice, you can set goals. I'm putting in here, you can build practice routines. I'm putting in here the contents of the courses that I'm building, as well as a library with lots of cool stuff. There's guitar chords. I haven't put in that many yet. I'm in the process of expanding this, but this is free. And anybody can come here and create a new account really quickly. You just need your email address. You come up with a password and you can log in and start tracking your progress and follow along with my courses. That's going to be one way that students can continue to engage with the process. The YouTube content and stuff I make, a lot of it's going to be tied into here. I'm going to keep Shred Network free. At least there will always be a free to use version if possible, if I can afford to keep it up and running. And when I do add materials, there may eventually be some things in here that people will need to pay for to have access to, but there will always be a lot of free resources in here as well. I'm going to have free courses in here. I'm going to have lots of cool free tools like this interactive fretboard calculator, interactive fretboard where you can have 7-string, 8-string versions, and as well as I'm going to put in here lots of exercises, lots of course materials, and the practice logging and goal setting and stuff is actually quite cool. Not all of it works perfectly yet. I'm still working out some time zone issues. It's complicated to build this stuff sometimes, but it's basically up and running and ready to have test users added. So if you want to continue to stay involved with my lessons on some level, you can make an account here for free. I really think that tracking your practice is really extremely valuable. We talked in the past lessons about how important it is to get streaks of days. So this online portal is designed to help encourage getting a practice streak and meeting your practice goal for the week and so on. It takes like literally 2 minutes and then you'll be in. And when I make new course material and stuff, it'll be put there, as well as subscribing to YouTube, of course. So I know this is a really long lesson. I did not want to misuse anyone's time, but before we wrap up, this is a good time to ask any final questions or give any feedback you have. I can handle it. I'll be okay. So how is everyone doing? How does everyone feel about the material we've covered so far? And yeah, are there any questions? So I guess we'll wrap up with that. Great job making it through the 8 weeks, everybody. Thank you for being here. This has been a really positive experience. And for me, relaunching these, and the next time around, I'm hoping they're even better. But yeah, I'm glad that some people made it to the end. And all right, see ya. Bye-bye, everyone.